We try not to hide anything with the test. We don't actually give it. But the big thing about the exam is they don't want to trick you, despite whatever you've heard. There is no arbitrary cutoff based on how many people they want licensed, that sort of thing. So I'm the director of the licensing board, by the way, and I started as director in 2001, and I started going out to NC State, talking to the seniors in a variety of programs, and we talked about, I would preach license promotion, get licensed, get licensed, get licensed. And of course, I would look around and half the class would be asleep, and after class, I'd get 100 questions about the test and nothing about my program. And I realized I was preaching to the choir. Everybody there was getting licensed, so my license promotion speech was just kind of wasted, which was why everybody was falling asleep. So over time, my program sort of morphed into answering questions that everybody has that nobody was answering. Like, I thought there was a professor at NC State who was answering questions about the exam process and rumors they heard about the day. And he said, well, I thought you were going to be answering those questions. And I said, well, I thought you were going to be answering those questions. Turns out nobody was answering those questions. So I've switched over time into trying to cover things that I've been, this is like a live FAQ program on the exam process. So I'm not going to talk to you about, what's on the test. That's other people that talk to you, but I'm going to talk to you about the test. Again, any rumors you've heard. Of course, now the big switch is I've had 20 years talking about the exam day and how that's going to go. And of course, that's not changed. And unfortunately for this group, or fortunately, depending on how you feel, you're going to be the first group going through the PE via computer. So I'm sort of back at the beginning. I'd like feedback from you guys after I give this presentation and you go take the test and you say, well, none of that turned out to be true. Email me so I can, change my program a little bit about the exam day. I still think the exam day itself will not be that much different. It's going to be a little shorter than going down to the McKimmon Center. These two went down to the McKimmon Center and took the test. How many have taken the FE? How many are planning on taking the FE? Okay, I have FE slides that I'll go through real quick now because nobody's really interested in them. But the old war story. Well, now you guys are old timers. You can date yourself because nobody goes down to the McKimmon Center anymore. The McKimmon Center PE day was 12 hours, and perhaps even seemed longer because there was no sleep the night before, worrying about the test. But the test started at. We told you to be there be there by 8 o'clock, so you get there at 7:30. By the time all the exam booklets were handed out, it was 8:30. 4 hours to take the morning session, 12:30, 45 minutes for lunch. Back at 1:15, 1:30, you would start up again. 4 hours, you're done at 5:30. By 6, I would tell everybody to go straight to the bar because there's nothing you can do. Don't propose to your significant other. Don't buy a house. Don't make major decisions because your brain is empty when you're done with the test. So I would say, sit on the couch, go drink a beer, do something different. So now it's different, right? It's not going to be at the McKimmon Center for 12 hours. It's going to be a computer testing facility, and I've got some slides on that, so I'll get there in a minute. Long intro to say, I've got slides. Like all slides, they tend to be boring. You guys are engineering students. Sometimes you find data infinitely more exciting than I find data. So I have a bunch of data slides. But really, I'm here to answer questions that you've got about the test, the license process itself, etc. So I'll jump in. This is who I am. I'm Andrew. I'm the executive director of the licensing board. Since all of you have taken the FE, you sort of know who we are. In its infinite wisdom, the North Carolina General Assembly has said that if by the practice of a profession you could potentially harm the public, that profession needs a licensing board. So there's 55 licensing boards in North Carolina, everything from the obvious doctors, lawyers, CPAs, dentists, all the way down to stuff that you wouldn't think would need a license, I probably shouldn't say this, but barbers have a licensing board, hairstylists have a licensing board. There's 55 of us out there. So we regulate engineering and surveying. We're a combined board. The number one sentence in our statute, so the only reason we exist is when you get a license, your number one priority is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Of course, we're not going to object if you make money. You want to make money, but the driving force behind getting your PE is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. What our job is to make sure when you build a bridge in North Carolina, it's built to stand, and it's built with the best steel, and it's built to last forever. So like I said, it's okay to make money, but your primary goal is not to make money. Your primary goal is to make sure that the bridge lasts forever, or this building stands, or that road lasts. It sounds kind of preachy, but once you get your license, you'll realize first off, the accomplishment that you've achieved, but there's a responsibility that comes with that license, and the responsibility is protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And everybody who is a PE, you guys all probably work for PEs, they will tell you when they pass the test and they got that seal, the first time they went to seal a document, they froze, their hand was shaking, because that's when the magnitude of the responsibility hits you, that you're protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So anyway, that's who we are. We call it the 3 E's, education, experience, and exam. You guys are coming up through the process in a completely different model, right? The old model was, I don't want to go off down a wrong path. How many NC State people? Oh, geez. I'm an NC State person. 80% of the licensed professional engineers who live in the state of North Carolina are NC State people, so I always reference NC State because it makes it easier. So UNC Charlotte people. All right. Who am I missing? A&T. All right. Do we have Duke? Yeah, we can say this because there's no Duke people here. Duke people don't come hear me speak. We meet with the, this is just, again, I tend to ramble in my presentations, try and keep everybody awake at 9 o'clock on Friday. We go down to NC State and speak, and everybody who's a civil or environmental at NC State, structural, agricultural, they all get licensed. You go down to UNC Charlotte, they're all getting licensed in the civil program. You go to A&T, everybody at A&T in the civil program, they're getting licensed. You go to Duke, they have 400 engineering students, 40 of the 400 come take our test. And so we met with the dean, and so I can tell it, right, there's nobody in Duke here. So we met with the dean at Duke, and we said, hey man, why only 40? And he said, well, we're Duke. And he said, the top 200 engineering graduates from Duke all go to Wall Street, right? I know you guys have made a career choice and you're gonna be PEs, but the underlying math in engineering is the same underlying math that makes you a successful Wall Street broker. So Duke being Duke, the top 200 of the 400 are going to Wall Street. They're committed their junior year. So now you're down to the bottom 200. So numbers 200 through 300, they're going to grad school of some type, medical school, law school, MBA school. This is the dean telling us this story. Okay, now we're down to the bottom 100, okay? Numbers 300 through 360 are going to engineering grad school, but they're going to Stanford, and he's telling us, they go to Stanford, they're going to MIT, right? They're going to Harvard. Okay. Now you're down to the bottom 40. He goes, those are the bottom 40 that we send you to take the FE exam. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's kind of snotty. But their pass rate is 40, of those 40 FEs who take the FE every year, their pass rate is 100%. In the 20 years I've been with the board, they've had one person that failed the FE. You want to talk about pressure, right? So they came back and took it and passed. And then he adds the little snotty comment of, and those 40 that pass the FE and become PEs, they all own the companies that NC State engineers work for. And you're like, okay, we're never coming back.
I didn't go to Duke, but gosh, this sounds like my school.
Yeah, where'd you go?
Lehigh University,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. But we beat Duke in basketball one year.
Yeah,
so,
which is probably more important. That's good. Right? So anyway, so I'll go through the licensing board slides real quick. It's just an intro to the board, because once you get licensed, you spend $75 a year to renew your license, and with that comes a lot of things. We have, again, education experience and exam to get licensed. We have an enforcement program. We have continuing education programs. I went off on a tangent. So the old model was, you can always sit up front, but then I'm going to stare at you the whole program. So on the 3 E's, right, it takes, I got off my tangent because I always refer to NC State. Graduate from college, take the FE, 4 years experience, take the PE, get licensed. That was the old model. The new license, and I've got slides on this later, the new model is you graduate, take the FE, take the PE whenever you want, with a total of 4 years experience, and of course, that's with an ABET engineering degree. Then when you hit the 4-year mark, you apply for licensure. If you've already got the 4 years when you pass the PE, you apply. You don't come to us until you pass the PE exam. There's no need. So pass the FE, pass the PE, you have 4 years experience, then you apply for licensure. I'm governed by 9 board members. David Pond is no longer on the list.
Right.
They're all appointed by the governor. I have 4 PEs, 3 land surveyors, 2 public members. What they do is they establish policy, they hire me, I carry out policy. That's how the board's set up. I've got 16 staff. Like I said, once you get licensed, for that $75 a year, call us, email us. I like to keep them busy. Any questions you have, most of the time it's how to get licensed in other states, continuing education requirements, does this count, does that count? We'll help you now. If you have questions about whether your experience will count, if you've got a non-ABET degree or if you have a non-engineering degree, we'll help you figure out how long it's going to take to get licensed. What the board does mostly is you'll read our statute, right? I know when you filled your application out, it said you read it, so I know I can ask you test questions about you actually read my statute. The definite you two in the back, don't laugh. The engineering statute is very broad. It essentially says using your education, your science, your math to make decisions in life, right? It's a very broad definition of engineering. We get questions every day, and that's what these guys do, is answer what is engineering and what's not engineering. Questions about the pharmaceutical process. We had questions about elevated recreational systems, which is a fancy word for zip lines. The zip lines need to be done by PEs. We get questions like that all the time. That's what these guys do. Okay, licensees, North Carolina, we've got 36,000. We have about 30,000 PEs. 55% of the PEs live in North Carolina, 55 do not live in North Carolina, 45% do. North Carolina is actually a very successful business state, very busy construction state. The average PE is licensed in about 4 to 5 states. And I have some slides on that in a minute. We'll help you get licensed in other states. Structurals tend to be the wackiest. Most structurals are licensed in 50 states. It's very hard to keep track of. We'll help you with that. When I first started the board as an investigator in 1993, we were the 29th largest population state in the country. We were the 29th largest engineering population state in the country. Now, 2022, we're the 8th largest population state in the country. We're the 8th largest engineering population state in the country. Just a little boring fact you can take home with you. We're 8th. Double us is Florida. They're 3rd. Double Florida is Texas, they're 2nd, and double Texas is California, they're 1st. So we have about 14 to 15,000 engineers that live in North Carolina. It's about 120,000 live in California. That's sort of the difference in size. We have anybody interested in surveying? Yeah, okay, you can make a lot of money as a surveyor. Average licensed surveyor makes more than the entry-level average civil PE, just in case you were thinking about a career switch. And the reason for that is we're not getting any surveyors. We have about 2,200 surveyors in North Carolina, which actually is a healthy number. We're 3rd in the country in surveyors, but the average age of the currently licensed surveyor is 60. So it's an aging profession, in case you have an interest. Okay, here's the PE numbers. Our PE numbers are healthy. We grow about 2 to 4% every year. I thought during COVID we might lose out-of-state numbers, but we didn't. The only number that we were it's off the chart now. The only number that the only year we ever lost numbers was the super recession in the early 2000s. But other than that, 2 to 4% is where our numbers grow. And hopefully you guys will add to that list. Here's my surveying trend. That's why I say if you're looking for a side career, we do have about 500 PE PLSs in North Carolina. You can get both, and that's worth its weight in gold. Here's firm. It's sort of an indicator how business is doing in North Carolina. Our firm is our fastest growth. We grow about 4 to 6% with our firms. Later, when you get licensed, we actually have a disciplinary program, which is infinitely more interesting than what I'm talking about. It's, if you've ever read our newsletter, the back 3 or 4 pages is all disciplinary activity over the last 6 months. And everybody always goes to that back page and wants to see who got in trouble. And the question is, well, how did they get in trouble? And we have a 2-hour ethics program that's sort of the law and order program for engineers, and it goes through actual case studies of how engineers got in trouble. There's 2 very distinct kind of cases. One is they knew what they were doing was wrong and they did it anyway, and they're treated a certain way. And then there's engineers who got in trouble because they didn't know what they were doing was wrong, and they get treated a certain way, and we don't think we'll ever see them again once they've gone through the disciplinary process. A lot of our time is spent on the engineers who know what they're doing is wrong, and they do it anyway. You know, signing and sealing documents that are outside their area of competence. Selling their seal is fairly common. You know, they don't even look, a contractor, for example, doesn't want to pay an engineer $5,000 to do his roof truss plans that the building inspector is requiring, so the contractor does it himself and pays his church buddy or his fishing buddy to seal them for $500. Those are the guys who have ethical type issues. So we have programs on that, which are, again, infinitely more interesting than what I'm talking about. This is one of the slides I've stolen. Who turns people in? Engineering cases are complex. It's usually going to be the inspection department. If you do engineering design plans for a house and a homeowner sees a big crack in their wall or their foundation, that's where the complaints come from. Rules of professional conduct, right? You 2 have this memorized because you signed a document that says, I read this. But if you're ever going to be bored and want to read something that the board put out, this is it right here. The rules of professional conduct. This is what guides you as an engineer once you get licensed. The bottom line is, public comes first, not making money. All right, now we're into my program. So I've got FE slides first, and again, I'm going to cover them, but I'm going to be very fast, assuming that nobody really cares now that you have the FE under your belt. Okay. Here's a general slide. We talked about this. North Carolina is what's referred to as a model law state. What the model law says is FE, PE, ABET engineering degree, 4 years experience. You get licensed in every state in the country. Okay. There's an odd number. I can't see it. You know, it's the old Friends show. You know the deal where you write down. You do this when you're bored. I better not see if you're doing it now, but just take a piece of notebook paper and write down how many states you can list. Right, 50 states, and the average person can come up with about 45 to 47. And there was a Friends episode where Joey came up with 52. The point of my story is there's 57 jurisdictions in the United States. So everybody's like, well, there's 50 states. How is there 57 jurisdictions? We have the Virgin Islands, we've got Guam, we've got Puerto Rico, we've got Washington, D.C. as its own jurisdiction. So this is the map of all the state license boards in the United States. That's just sort of an intro slide. So again, we'll skip this. Everybody took it. It's on computer. Anybody in EI? Okay, working on it. It's not hard. Pass the FE exam. We have a 1-page form on our website. It's automatic. If you've taken the FE, you've already got an NCAAS account, right? The only thing that might be missing is if you didn't send in your transcripts yet. But if you want to be an EI, we have a one-page form on our website. You fill it out, you send it to us, it's free. NCAAS will send us your FE results because it's in their system, and they will send us your transcripts if they're in the system. So the FE, or the EI is not required in North Carolina. It's one of those things that we learned when we switched the exam to computer. The old way was, we had sign-up night at NC State. 800 people would sign up that last week in January. It was an assembly line. You went down and you took the test you didn't even have to do the application. They did it for you. You signed it and off it went. They handed us 800 applications. You took the FE in April. You passed. NC State would send us a graduation list. We would send you your engineering intern certificate in the mail. You didn't have to do anything. When we went to computer, and NC State's not involved anymore, UNC Charlotte's not involved, none of the colleges are involved anymore, the EI went out the window. So it's not required in North Carolina. I'm not sure your boss gives you anything for being an EI, but if you want it, it's free, one-page form. About 1 out of 3 FE passers become EIs, and 2/3 do not. So it's usually a business decision, or you want to put something on your resume. You've already done this, so I'm going to skip it. Again, kind of feels silly now because usually 80% of my class is NC State people, so I always like to point out that in a bizarre sort of number, NC State is number 4 in the country in FE examinees, and I don't know why. Let me see, is Lehigh on there? No. Even though this is FE, okay, so again, the PE's done with paper and pencil. It's now on computer. You guys are going to be the first go round. It just went live on the computer in January. There's no data, but they have a ton of data for the FE, and I'm sure it's not going to be that much different. Here are the big testing windows, right? Did anybody not take the FE on computer? No, how long ago did you take it?
2011.
Wow.
2010.
You guys waited a long time. You don't count. Okay, so just for you two guys, right? The FE, so you had the old way, 12 hours. I don't know, did you take it at McKinney Center?
I took it at
A&T.
A&T.
Yeah, same thing, 12-hour day, right? So now on computer, just again, another quick story. When the transition was from paper to computer, okay? There's this whole industry that I was not aware of called psychometricians. And what psychometricians do is they evaluate tests. Like, that's what somebody wanted to grow up to be, is an evaluator of tests. They do make 6 figures, they're all PhDs, and they study exams. And so what the FE does is it's judging minimum level of competence when it comes to the fundamentals of engineering. The PE is judging whether you're minimally competent as a professional engineer. And so they have this test, right? And the question is, how do we know that it is attesting to a minimum level of competence? Well, they hire these psychometricians. They're the ones who come up with the criteria. Well, it was an 8-hour test, and now we're going to go on computer. And you'd like to think it was for the greater good, but a computer testing seat is very expensive. It's far more expensive than the seat down at the McKinney Center or at A&T. So they hired them psychometricianists, and they said, we need to really relook at this exam. It started in 1920. It's now 2010. We need to know what it takes to establish a minimum level of competence. But let's not forget that a computer testing seat is also very expensive. We need to be a little cynical about this. So they actually, the first thing they did was try to figure out why the test was 8 hours. And this is not a lie. I don't want to make anybody feel bad about their testing process. But all they could find was in the minute books of it in 1920, when they were establishing what it was going to take to be a PE, is some old guy in the room said, I think the test should be all day. And that's how they came up with 8 hours. So now it's been looked at by these psychometricianists. They factored in computer seat time and they decided that it was going to be a 6-hour test, which really is 5 hours and 20 minutes because they build in prep time and you got to still fill out some information and build in some break time. So the computer exam is only 5 hours. So you got screwed out of 3 hours of testing. But anyway, I lost where I got off track a little bit. Here are the big testing windows. Okay, this, in case you can't read it, that's October to December. That's January, March. So this was in the first 5 years. This is the second 5 years. Again, I know that's FE numbers, but we don't have PE numbers. The reason I'm pointing this slide out is the sign-up process works the same. Okay, you go to NCLS, you sign up, you pay, and it's going to route you to Pearson View. Pearson View is the testing facility. Then you pick where you want to go. Right? There's the one on Glenwood Avenue near CarMax, near the airport. But you can pick anyone where you want to go. My knucklehead son, who wanted to take it with his friends, he took the FE last October. He waited till like 2 weeks before the test, and went, okay, buddy, sorry, the seats are gone. And he ended up in Durham. The point of the story is you further in advance you sign up, the more likely you're going to get the time and date you want. And again, these are FE windows, but the biggest window there is April and June, right? You look at your life and where you are, and you decide when it's best to take the test. You sign up and you stick with it. Okay. The students were taking it right after they graduated, and then the second biggest window was spring break, and then their third biggest window was the week after Christmas. So just little things to think about when it comes time to take up the test. So one of the odd things that they found, like when you took the test down at the McKimmon Center, you took it in person, paper and pencil, there was a peer pressure component that when you signed up, you went and took it. Okay, the no-show number was like 2%. Okay, now because it's on computer and you can, so the analogy I like to make is if your professor says you have a term paper due April 10th, you're going to turn it in April 10th. Your professor says you have a term paper due, but you turn it in whenever you want. When are you going to turn it in? Right? That's what's happening with the exam. And so people are signing up for the exam and then they're canceling. And so the cancel and reschedule number is about 10 to 15%. And so everybody here is going, well, that's not going to be me. Well, the odds are at least 2 or 3 people here will do what I just said and they'll reschedule. And you can reschedule, and they keep raising the fee to try and discourage you from doing that because you're blocking somebody from taking the test. But anyway, again,
It's $50 right
I think they're
now.
going up.
Moved mine from March.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody moved it, right? Because you about 2 weeks out, you go, I'm not ready, and you push it. And on that, again, I'm going to scatter it around. There's no punishment for not passing the test except money. So I often give the advice of, I'm 2 weeks out, I don't want to take it. I'm not ready. Well, you signed up, you paid for it, go take it. The worst that can happen is you fail, but you've seen the test, right? There's no harm in seeing the test. You're not going to get the same test questions again, but you've seen the test, you've seen the process, like especially for the 2 guys who haven't taken it on computer, right? Maybe you want to see it on computer. So, and then, right? 7 out of 10 are passing it, so maybe you pass. But there's a high number of people who are signing up and not taking the test. It's a big number. $2 to $3 million a year revenue item for NCLES. We'll skip this. Here's some pass rates in case you wanted to see. Again, I'm an NC State proud alum. The NC State pass rate is about 80% on the FE exam. The Ag department is around 100%, which is an odd number for Ag. But the national number is 65%. Is anybody not taking civil? What are you taking?
Oh, I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Hopefully I have some slides that will make you feel better. What was your degree in?
Body on the hack.
Okay, so I'm answering my own question. The highest, this is your decision, but the highest pass rate is taking the test in your degree, not where you're working. So you can ask me questions about that, but If your degree is in bio, then the theory is taken in bio, even if you're working in something else. And then there's been this new theory, especially on the FE, is take the other. I talked to the bio and ag at NC State, and all of them are taking the other, and they have 100% pass rate. So they've decided that test is easier than the other tests. But the theory is take it in what your degree is in. These are our FE exam numbers. We were worried about how it was going to go on computer, but they sort of stayed the same. All right, now we're on the PE exam. Okay, the process has changed. We're an early test taking state. That came about 10 years ago. The ball started rolling. Theory is fundamentals of engineering, excuse me, is on the fundamentals of engineering. Everybody takes the same 6 to 8 fundamentals of engineering courses in your undergrad degree, and that's what makes it an ABET degree. That's what the fundamentals are on. Okay? Why you're pushing the buttons on the computer, that's the fundamentals. Okay? The PE exam was always considered a practice-based exam, meaning the theory was you needed a minimum of 4 years of experience before you were going to be able to pass that test. Well, something happened out west about 15 years ago where they decided they didn't like that theory, and they started allowing early testing. So they allowed people mostly at the 2-year mark to start taking the test. And NCAAS didn't like it. They were saying you were setting these kids up for failure by letting them take it early. Well, they had about 5 years of data which made it statistically significant, and it showed whether you took the test at the 2-year mark, the 3-year mark, up to the 5-year mark, the pass rate was about the same. So that opened the door towards early test taking. And actually the inverse was true, where 10 years experience, the theory would be you'd have a higher pass rate, but in reality, the pass rate after 5 years really starts diving. So 10 years out, 20 years out, the pass rate starts going down. And for those of you who are more than 5 years experience out from graduating, I don't want this to be a downer or depress you. It just means you have to work hard. The theory behind the pass rate dropping is not the experience quality that you're getting. It's the ability to take a test again, right? And when was the last time you took a test? When was the last time you took a test, right? So it's not that you're getting dumber. It's, as you know, every day away from college, your education brain sort of drifts away and it's replaced by the work brain, or the spouse brain, or the house brain, or whatever else is going on in your life. You forget how to study. You forget how to. I went back and got my master's 7 years after I had my undergrad degree, and I had to relearn how to read a textbook, right? And I had no idea that that's what was going to happen with my brain. That's why the pass rate starts going down the further you're out of college. This is the best thing you can be doing right here, because it's retraining your brain on how to study. So you're going to be in much better shape than the person who wakes up and says, okay, I'm going to take the test today, or in 6 months, so I'm going to start studying. So anyway, again, I rambled a little bit. To become a PE in North Carolina, pass the FE, pass the PE, depending on your degree, it's either 4 years or 8 years experience, then you make application to us. That's how to become a PE in the state of North Carolina. About 20 to 25 states are early test taking states, and the process is similar. But every state in the country, if you have a 4-year engineering degree, it's FE, PE, 4 years experience, and then you can get licensed in their state. So, all right, everything's on computer now. You can't dodge it. Some people find it to be good news. Some people find it to be bad news. The old war story, right? When you took the PE at the McKimmon Center, it was a sight to behold. And the first time I saw it, it's hard to explain that when 400 people come in the room for an open book test, what they're bringing with them. And it was milk crates, it was suitcases, it was hand trucks. And you were at a table like this, it's exactly this big, 2 seats, and they would build walls of books. And then how many books did you bring? Do you remember?
20 or 30.
Yeah, how many did you bring in?
Same.
Yeah. So they did a study Well, let me set the table. So when the FE went from open book to closed book, everybody in the whole country complained, okay? And the pass rate jumped 10 percentage points, just like that. And it's because when it went to closed book, you're not looking through 30 textbooks. You wasted a significant amount of time going through 30 textbooks, looking for the answer. So they went to the closed book test. The FE, right, it's the 100-page reference manual. It's a 100-page cheat sheet. It's not the manual. It's not on the test. So instead of 30 books, you had one book. Pass rate went up 10%. Okay, then the FE went on computer. And what happened? The test rate went up 10 more points. So it went from the mid-50s to the mid-60s to the mid-70s, and like I said, NC State's in 80. The question is, well, what happened? The questions are the same. Well, you're not going to like this, but the FE, it's split screen, and one has a reference handbook in PDF searchable format. So no longer did you have to highlight, and put little sticky notes to the formulas you wanted, or where on, this 100-page book is the formula I need. It's in searchable format. Okay, what's the point of my story? That's what the PE exam is now like. Okay, it's closed book. Okay, I have a slide later that tells you what they give you in the closed book format when you take each specific exam. But let me rephrase this. I hope everybody's been to NCAA's homepage by now. And on the NCAA's homepage is the link for the PE exam, and I've got a slide for it later. And then it's got the exam module, and this is the number one thing you should have done, and if you haven't done it, you need to do it soon. You click on the PDF for the exam spec for your exam, and it's going to be a 4-page PDF, and they come as close as they can, telling you what the questions are on the test. And again, if my links work here, we'll go to one. And now what they've done is, at the bottom of the PDF, they tell you what reference books they are going to give you when you take the closed book test. So for you, you're uncertain, you need to go to that. And then you look at the reference material, and if it looks familiar to you, then you say, I'm good to go. If none of the reference material looks good to you, you say, well, maybe I better pick a different test. But it's common materials. So, but again, it's going to be a split screen. One screen's the test. One screen is going to be the reference material. Everything's on computer. Do I have any structurals? Yeah, so good. Structural is not on computer yet. The structural, we're not an SE state. An SE state is where they require the structural exam to do certain types of buildings. Like California, if the building is a public building over 3 stories, you have to have taken the structural exam. Illinois is a structural state. There's some tornado states that you have to be an SE to do certain types of building, and then there's earthquake states. We are not one of them. To do buildings in North Carolina, you decide based on your area of competence if you can do it. Most structurals in North Carolina have taken the PE civil structural exam. You don't have to take structural. Structural is not a computer because they can't decide what reference handbooks or reference books they can put on the computer. The pass rate for the SE exam is under 50%. It's in 2 parts and it's very expensive. So only take that test if your employer says you have to take it. So anyway, all the exams are on computer. Here are all the exam disciplines, just in case you want to confuse yourself. I will tell you again, data shows that the exam in your degree has the highest pass rate. So where people are confused is, so what was your degree in? Chemistry, and then what was your master's in?
Civil.
And then what'd you take? And what'd you take the exam in?
Environmental.
And how'd
Civil and environmental. Civil in the morning,
Oh,
environmental in the afternoon.
you took the DEF modules, environmental.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most environmentals, do we have environmentals? All civils? Okay, civil what? Transportation, structural? Okay.
Water resources.
Okay, I've got a slide on that in a minute. Okay, so I'll finish with this. Makes it easier. It makes you guys are all take civil, and then you'll just have to pick which of the DEF modules excites you more than the other DEF modules, which is this slide. Do I have a Can I click on a link?
Yeah, with the mouse, you should be able to.
All right, do we have any construction? One, we're gonna do a poll, geotech, structural, transportation. All right, that's gonna win.
Did it pull it up on the other screen?
Yes, yeah. Can I slide that over?
Yeah, you're supposed to drag it over. I know it's.
All right, so hopefully you've seen this. I'm trying to center. How did it go?
It said not responding, I'll have to close itself.
Okay. Now hopefully we go back. All right, so hopefully you've seen this. This is the exam spec page.
I guess you have to stay up there.
You might have to
Let me
minimize
try.
that.
All right.
Yeah, let me try.
All right.
Let me scroll for you.
No, unless it closes out. All right, so have you seen this?
Yeah, I think.
Yes, we have seen it.
Okay.
Oh,
Just take it back to my PowerPoint. If they've seen it, I'm not gonna waste it.
okay.
Like on the water resources, it says 2 resources, mostly the 10 state standards.
Yeah. All right, and have you been to the new one where it's got, what I wanted to show you was the reference handbooks at the bottom. Have you seen the new one with the reference handbooks at the bottom? Okay, if you have not, they put up a new one, and it's got the material that will be in your closed book material on the test for each of these links. So again, that's what you need to be familiar with. It is in searchable format, but you need to be familiar with those when you go into the test, okay? The environment is different in a testing environment. You've got in a computer testing environment. The good news is most of you have done the FE on the computer, so you're familiar with it. It has not changed. Okay, I was getting ready to say something about what you can bring in there, but I'll come back to that. I'll stick with my order. Here are the pass rates. The highest pass rate is on the first time you take it. But if you're going to take it the second or third time, don't let that depress you. Okay? We have a significant number of people who pass it on their second and third time. When you get to your fourth time, that's sort of the bad news. Okay? You can see what happens, you know, looking at transportation, 70% pass rate. I mean, that's good news, 70% pass rate on the first go around. And it drops to 46% after that, which is sort of a skewed number. The theory behind the test is if you're going to pass it, you're going to pass it. And that's sort of a Zen-like statement. But you've passed the FE. That's a big hurdle, right? For most people, the FE is the big hurdle. And then coming back to the PE is not really a competence issue. It's more of a, do I want to do this? Do I have time to do this? Did I stick with engineering? Okay? The pass rate is pretty high, 70%. If you prepare correctly and you go in and give it a good effort, the pass rate is pretty good. And engineering is one of the top degree programs in the world. You've all gone to great schools and you've passed the FE, you should pass this test, okay? It's a confidence statement. If you prepare properly and you get a good night's sleep and you're ready, you have a solid chance of being in that 70%. people who are not in the 70% are the ones who are not supposed to pass this test. And NCLS is firm on that. Not everybody is cut out to be a professional engineer, right? I mean, it's one of the top professions in the world, okay? It's a one-word resume. But the people who don't pass it, they pass it for a couple reasons. One, they goofed off, right? They didn't get a good night's sleep. They didn't prepare properly. They had a degree that didn't prepare them for the test, okay? That 70% number comes from I prepared properly, I got a good night's sleep, I went to those exams pages, and I made sure I had prepared accordingly, okay? Because there's 4 pages of material, and not everything in there you have done, okay? The exam percentage, the passing score is 70%. So there are some things that you're going to do very well on, and you're going to get 100%. And there's some things you're not going to do well on, and you'll get a 20%. And hopefully the balance puts you over the 70%. But the point of that exam spec page is you make an honest assessment of, I didn't have any of this stuff, right? And every question counts on the test. And that's where you ask Daniel, hey, I don't have this. I don't have any experience in this. I don't know anything about it. Where can I find it? Talk to people at work. You know, everybody who's a PE at work has gone through the same process. They will help you. They're your greatest resource when it comes to this exam. So seek out as much information as you can when you go into this testing room, okay? There's a couple things that hold true that are the same on the FE exam. You do not get punished for wrong answers, okay? So answer a question. There is time pressure. This is what Daniel talks to you about, right? There's a time pressure. So don't get stuck on a question for 10 minutes because then you're screwing yourself on questions down the road. Like my son, he just took the FE and he called me crying after the test and I ran out of time. And of course, he went to NC State and he never came to one of my programs because he said, I heard you talk about this at dinner for 20 years, so I didn't need to go. And I said, I told you, don't spend too much time on certain questions and then answer it, right? You don't get punished for guessing. You get punished if you don't answer the question. The odds are 25% that if you don't know the answer and you answer it, you're going to get it right. Right? Everybody's an A, B, C, or D person, right? I'm an A person. If I don't know what I pick A every time. Okay, I figure over life, I'm 25%, right? That's the average, I hope. But anyway, if you get stuck on a question, answer it and move on. That's where you're going to screw yourself, is jamming up. You know, you get the traffic jam, everyone drives into the traffic jam. You don't want to jam yourself up by slowing yourself up by getting stuck in certain questions. So pace yourself, right? I've got a time slide here in a minute that talks about how much time you have. Here, more pass rates. Okay, this is my slide on that I was talking about with the experience. And again, I don't want to upset anybody in the room. So this bottom, the blue bar is number of years experience. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so here's the 2-year window, 3-year window, 4-year window, 5-year window. One of the little interesting pieces of information is Kentucky went first, and I asked them, you know, what happened with their testing numbers when they first started early test taking. And the first cycle, they doubled their numbers. They went from 400 to 800, and so that's what we expected. And sure enough, the first go-round of early test taking, we went from 400 the first year to 800. And I thought it was going to be all 2- and 3-year people taking the test, experienced people. Well, that was not true. It was all 5- and 6-year people. Well, the early test taking didn't affect them. And I'm like, well, why are you guys all of a sudden taking the test? Well, what it was they were looking at down the hall at the person who had 2 and 3 years experience starting to prep. They had never taken the test, and it started to worry them. So the early test taking really didn't give me early test takers. It pushed everybody into the system. But anyway, here's the pass rate line. This is right at the 4-year mark. So the pass rate is still highest at 4 years, okay? Again, I don't mean to upset anybody. And then here's the 5-year mark, and then you can see what happens after 12 years. It starts to drop. But the reason that drops, again, is because you've forgotten how to study, right? You forgot how to read a textbook. For me, I'm glad my wife's not in the room, but when I would try and study on a Sunday, I would save all my work for Sunday, and then I would do it Sunday. I had to give up football for 3 years when I was getting my master's, and it was to do all my homework on Sundays. And she was mad at me. I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Let's go somewhere. And she wanted me to get my master's so I could get a better job and make more money and buy a bigger house and nicer cars and all that stuff. But it was the fact that I had to study and she didn't want me to study was one of the impediments. And I'm sure that goes for everybody in this room. Life takes over, right? So you need to set study blocks. This is my time. I ended up going to the Wake County Public Library to study on Sundays because at home, something was going on, right? And I had kids, and that would be a problem. And it sounds silly to talk about it, but the people who don't pass the test, they've done surveys. That's why they don't pass the test. Sometimes they have a garbage degree, okay? Or they have a degree that doesn't help them. And we've seen that, right? And I'm not going to disparage anybody's college, but you know, we'll get some degrees, and we're like, okay, this person doesn't have a chance in hell of passing the test because their degree is not preparing them properly. But you guys all have a good degree, so you have the education foundation. So they've done this study. If you have the education foundation, why aren't you passing this test? Because you passed the FE. Well, it's life. Life is what's keeping you from passing the test. It's make sure you have I mean, it sounds silly, right? I sound like a parent talking to my kids when I say, go study someplace where you can study, okay? Don't study in your room where there's distractions and the bed's right there, right? If my son's supposed to be studying, look at him, he's sound asleep, right? I did the same thing. Those are the things that keep you from passing the test. Your kids running around the house, cutting the grass, football on Sundays, whatever it may be, NCAA basketball, right? Anyway. SE, nobody's taking the SE. Here's the number that you asked about at the beginning. So this is the average age of the person taking the test. So it's an interesting slide. When I showed you the peak test taker is around the 4 to 5 year experience mark. You can't really see, but the average PE test taker is 33 years old. Okay, right in the category, right?
Yeah.
So you look around the room, right? You're not too old, you're not too young. When we used to give the exam over at the McKibben Center, there'd always be a 70-year-old in the back of the room. Like, what are you doing? He goes, well, I finally found the time and I wanted to see. So there is no picture-perfect demographic for taking the PE exam, okay? There's all walks of life taking the test. Of course, it was fun to be in the McKibben Center and look around and see who's taking the test. Now you're at the computer center, you're not going to be able to see that anymore, but there's all walks of life taking the test. 33 years old, okay? That's the average. So there's 26-year-olds, there's 4-year-olds. You guys fit right into the middle. PS, different, right? Average age is 38. So it's not too late after you pass the PE. Okay, this is my computer-based exam. This is straight out of the candidate exam booklet that you got when you signed up for the test. Okay, you got this when you got the FE. And I have found probably 9 out of 10 people don't read this. Okay. Oh, let me go back. Hang on, I'll come back to that. So let me talk about something on the pass rate. If you don't pass, and hopefully this didn't happen to you on the FE, but if you didn't pass the FE, the number one piece of information that you get is called the Diagnostic Report. And the reason it hit me in my head, people don't read it. Okay, people call me all the time and say, hey, I failed. I failed the first time, I failed the second time, I failed the third time. And my first question every time is, did you read the Diagnostic Report? I'm like, what's the Diagnostic Report? I'm like, it was the piece of information after the letter that said you failed.
Is this?
It's that. Okay, you didn't have to do that in front of everybody.
Yeah, you're good.
And it takes what's on the exam spec sheet, the 16 categories, and it makes them into 16 line items, and it tells you what percentage you got in those 16 line items, okay? And it's gonna say 82%, okay, good. 71%, good. 69%, close enough. And then it's gonna say 20%. Well, that's why you failed the test. You can't overcome that 20%, okay? You take that report to Daniel, and he'll look at it and say, this is where you need to study next time, okay? So if you take the PE and do not pass, the first thing you do is you go look at that diagnostic report. And it will tell you where you were weak or where you were strong. And it's a huge document if you've been out of school for 10 or 15 years. Because there are things you do at work every day that are gonna make you good on the test. They will translate well to the exam. And next time you go take the test, maybe not put as much effort into that area because you've got that area left. But the area you got is 0% or 10% or 50%, that's where you need to focus your study. The data shows that people who fail the test the first time and who are going to come back and pass it on the second time have one or two very deficient areas. Okay? There's two types of failure. Well, there's three types of failure. Okay? There's the one who is between 65 and 70% across the board. Okay? That's sort of a good news document. That means you're going to pass the test, you just didn't study properly. You need to go to Daniel's class, right? The 65 across the board is easily bumped to 70. Okay? The second group is the one who's above 70 on 8 out of the 10, but they got a 10 or a 20 on the one or two remaining items. Okay? The good news there is you're going to pass the test. You just need to focus on those one or two items where you bombed. Okay? The third group is the group who got 60 below across the board. And the bad news is you're never going to pass the test. Okay? Unless there's some sort of I don't want to say a miracle, but there's a miracle out there. We had a person who, again, she had her biology degree. She took the exam 6 times and failed it. And we said, well, what are you taking no, she had her chemistry degree. And she worked for an electrical company. She's taking the electrical exam. The principles and practices is an electrical test, or a practice-based exam, so I'm going to take the electrical test. She took it 6 times and failed. She came in, she met with us. We said, what's your degree in? She said, chemistry. We said, go take the chemistry test. She passed it the next time. Okay, that's proof that it's your degree, not your practice. But the point was, she was below 50 in every category. She couldn't pass the test. Well, that was the miracle. You were taking the wrong exam. So, anyway, I went past my time.
Can I mention one thing on the new one? So have you seen the new diagnostic exam? They've changed it.
What part? The report. The
so
report.
It's no longer exactly aligns with the percentage you get correct, but it's still very helpful. The diagnostic, hopefully you know you need the next diagnostic exam, so then you don't even need to worry about it. But they have changed, so now the score is no longer how many you got right, it's how you did relative to people who passed the exam.
Oh, that's interesting.
It gives both.
Oh, it does? The one I saw didn't have it.
I have both. I have 100% correct. And
All
then
the dirty
but
secrets are coming out.
Yeah, that's good, okay.
The sliding scale makes no sense.
Okay, yeah, and that's, okay, so maybe we can talk more about it and figure out, but
Yeah.
I felt it wasn't as helpful as the previous one. So you took it since January?
Oh, no.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So since January, they changed with the CBT, they changed it, that they no longer give that.
April last year has.
Okay. It had that,
correct,
so,
and then it has a gray, like, center and then what side.
yeah, so the new one just shows you relative to people who passed.
So what kind of number did it give you?
It seems to be, I don't know, the psychometrician gave you a number that,
Do they still
it
give you-
seems like you should be able to say, if there's 4 problems, you got 3 of them wrong, but it's a numerical score that seems to be between 0 and 50. And so you could say here, you got a 15.3 on this one. So it's not a question's correct, it's
Compared.
yeah, it is comparing to people who passed, and I'd be glad to show you the one that I have seen this
Yeah,
exam,
yeah.
but just let you know, don't get worried about it. It still gives you, in my opinion, still gives you what you need in order for what to study, but it is a little different. They changed it a little bit,
Okay.
but I don't want to
All right.
derail too much, but it is a little different.
All right. So again, this comes from the candidate sign-up book, and again, people don't read it. Okay, my son didn't read it. People don't read it, and the question is, well, why should I read it? Well, there's a significant number of people who score 65, 67, 68 on this test. Okay. Well, how did you miss a point or two? Right. That's all you need was a point or two, right? You go home, you bang your head, against the wall and you drink 27 beers and say, well, how did I miss that point or two? These are the little things that can get you a point or two, okay? Making sure that your computer doesn't die, right? There's a computer provided for you on the computer testing screen, but who the hell wants to do the computer on the testing screen because your calculator, because your calculator died. Okay? Make sure your calculator works, make sure it's the proper calculator, make sure you're familiar with all the formulas. My son would shoot me, he knew I kept bringing up him as an example, but he's typical. A week before the test, he said, hey, I went to that calculator approved list that you told me to, and my calculator's not on there. I said, you freaking knucklehead, you should have done that 6 months ago. Okay? Make sure your calculator's on the approved list and you know the formulas, right? You don't want to be learning formulas the night before the test, or learning on the fly at the exam testing center, right? Okay? Believe it or not, the number one way, this is not a pass or fail thing, but the number one way people don't get in to take the test is because their ID is not valid, okay? Your driver's license has to be current to be considered a valid ID, okay? Your NC State ID is not considered a government-issued ID. Your passport is, your driver's license is, your TSA little passport card is, but your WK Dixon ID is not a valid government, no matter what David Pond thinks, he's not bigger than the government. So make sure your ID is valid, right? Check your driver's license. Okay. One of the big things is your comfort bag of food, right? It's a long day. Make sure you have enough comfort food to get through the day, right? The question at 9 in the morning counts as much as a question at 3 in the afternoon, okay? What's the difference? How much caffeine you have, how much sugar you have in the system. Do you have comfort food that can get you through the day, okay? Again, these are cheater ways to get 3 or 4 points, but if you're dead at 4 o'clock, and you get that question wrong because you didn't have that Snickers bar, that's on you for not bringing comfort food, okay? That could be the difference between passing and failing. And again, statistics show significant percentage of people between 65 and 70. So read this page, approved comfort items, ID, calculator.
Can I make one comment for you? Now, I've shared this with the class, but I did hear from our recent examinee at the Pearson View Center that they were really particular about light sweater and jacket. The jacket didn't meet the light jacket. It was too big, they said. And so he said he was uncomfortable the whole exam
Because he was
it
cold.
cold. And so I recommended even if you leave them in your vehicle, bring multiple, long sleeve t-shirt, a sweater, what you would consider a light jacket, a heavier jacket, and that way you have options. If they say this isn't going to work, you can go back to your vehicle and get something that's heavier. So bring yourself some options. That person may have been having a bad day. You don't know what happened. Somebody cut them off in traffic and they're mad, and there's some judgment in there. So just let you know that I'm recommending people have options with them. Again, lower your stress. Don't make that be a barrier like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Keeping your car, it's not going to be a
Yeah. And something new, right, is review the mask mandate. The mask mandate, I think has been lifted at the computer testing facilities, but when they reopened and people had to wear masks, whether it was the jacket or the mask, it became annoying when your mask would drift down below your nose and the guy would come over and say, you need to put your mask up on, broke your train of thought. So I think the masks are gone, but that's an important part. Where am I missing a point or two, right? Make sure comfortable clothes, comfort food, you're prepared for the day. Again, I sound like a parent. You really, really want a good night's sleep, and you want to be ready for the test. Here's I'm too short, but here's PE Civil. Here's the day, 9 hours. Okay. Here's the breakdown. 2 minutes to sign the non-disclosure agreement. 8-minute tutorial. 8 hours to take the test with a 50-minute break. Okay.
Can I give maybe a couple more things?
Yeah.
So one thing, this was odd. They didn't let the person bring in their glasses case, just the glasses. So just maybe this is for your, I don't think that matters, but it seems odd.
Yeah, I haven't heard that before.
And then the other one was just maybe you may want to start practicing in this way. You do not get scratch paper on the exam. You get a small whiteboard.
Yeah, whiteboard that's erasable.
And so just, again, you don't want that thing that's kind of throwing you off like, oh, I expected paper and pencil to be able to write stuff. So it probably is worth, a few bucks to find a small whiteboard and use dry erase markers just so that you're kind of familiar with working things that way. And so again, it's just not another thing like, oh, I thought I was going to have paper and pencil. No, you're going to have a small whiteboard and you're going to have to erase it and, just get comfortable. That's the way it's going to be.
Or laminated paper.
Yeah, I actually took the FE in September,
Uh-huh.
and they give you first, like 10 sheets of laminated paper,
Okay.
and with the Sharpie, and you don't really have time to really erase it. If you need more, you just raise your hand to bring more laminated paper.
Okay.
I mean, that's how it was during the FE, like September, 8 months ago, so.
But again, if you haven't worked with it, it's
Yeah.
important.
Absolutely.
So that's good. So yeah, maybe try both, because the only thing I heard recently was just a whiteboard, and that was news to me. So just sharing that so it sounds like you're likely though not to walk in and it be paper and pen or pencil. It's going to be something you probably haven't used. So either be aware that that's going to happen, or if you can, do a little practice.
Yeah, and the good news is, for one of the difficult things I've had over the last 10 years is the transition from paper to computer. And a whole bunch taken on paper, and now they're going to be taken on a computer. The good news is all but 2 have already taken it in a computer testing environment, so you're familiar with it. And it's hard to describe if you haven't been in a computer testing environment. But yeah, so again, it's a 9-hour day. You need to be prepared for the 9-hour day. There's 5 points sitting on the table for being prepared versus being unprepared, okay? And again, 65 is a very common score. So what is it gonna take me? Yes, it'd be nice to, blow through it and get an 80, but most people are in that 65 to 75 window. And it's where are the points, okay? Time your answers. The best thing to do is go by NCAAS's practice test, but that's them, that costs money. You can find them on the web, right? Do practice tests. Start learning the pacing of the exam, okay? Make sure, if you're taking that one on Glenwood Avenue, make sure you budget for the traffic, right? Traffic sucks near the airport at 8 in the morning, okay? Those are little freebie things, okay? 9 hours, long day. Bring your comfort food, okay? Just be ready. I went over my time, I rambled a little bit. Get licensed, we'll have to get licensed in other states. I think it's pretty much my last slide, so we'll talk about it. Here's exam numbers. That's it, questions? Went over my time, but this is for you. So if you heard questions about the exam day, the exam process, exam results, they say are coming in, the old way. When you took it down at the McKimmon Center, it would take 8 to 10 weeks to get results. They're now saying 7 to 10 days on the computer. I don't know if that's true or not. One day you'll get an email and you just hover over it, but they're saying 7 to 10 days. If you pass, you have 4 years experience, get your license right away. If you do not pass, again, you can call me. I talk about diagnostic reports all the time. Go to Daniel, go to people in your office. It's not the end of your career if you don't pass the test. A lot of people 2nd, 3rd, 4th times will pass the test if they read the diagnostic report correctly and they study accordingly. So, any questions about the process, the day, the exam? All right. Good luck to everybody. I hope we pass, and then we see who's licensed.